WWE's Hall of Fame is the night before WrestleMania, and we have another interesting choice here. Some people would want it to be the full stable version of this. However, it will be the tag team combination of Bret the Hitman Hart and Jim the Anvil Neidhart, the late great Anvil, as the original Hart Foundation. Not the 97 stable that people were thinking of, which means, unfortunately, Brian Pillman, the British Bulldog, and Owen Hart will not be inducted. I kind of saw this coming a mile away because, the thing with Owen and Martha and all the shit with WWE and all that, it's probably, unfortunately, never going to happen. As much as I personally want it to happen, but, to each their own. But we're not going to let this damper that moment, because the Hart Foundation themselves were a great tag team, honestly. A great tag team. I mean, former tag team champions in their own right. Two WWF tag champions in their own right, as well as number 37 in the PWI years. But, around that time, you think about the tag team scene at that time, with Demolition, the Rougeaus, the Legion of Doom for a certain period of time, the Brainbusters. They were probably the more premier tag team of that era, if you think about it. But let's look at them individually as well, because technically, this means Bret Hart is now a two-time Hall of Famer as well, which means we have three men that will have two Hall of Fame rings when this is said and done. Shawn Michaels, Booker T, and now Bret Hart. So, that club is starting to get a little bigger as far as the two-time Hall of Fame thing is going on. But as far as Bret is concerned, he did have an amateur background, believe it or not. Some people don't really think of that. But as far as amateur wrestling goes, it's for Calgary Wrestling, he won the city championship in Calgary in 1974. And for collegiate wrestling, he won the Mount Royal Championship in 1977 and was in the National Wrestling Hall of Fame in 2006. But as far as his wrestling career goes, it's a heck of a thing, which we'll get through. And it's interesting. For the Cauliflower Alley Club, the Iron Mike Award in 2008. For the Canadian Wrestling Hall of Fame as an individual, and with the Hart family in general. For the George Ragnos Lou Fez Personal Hall of Fame in the class of 2006. For Prairie Wrestling Alliance, their Hall of Fame in 2010. For the Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame and Museum, their class in 2008. For Pro Wrestling Illustrated, the comeback of the year in 97, which was a great year for Bret. I mean, obviously, besides an incident in Montreal, which we will not discuss, was a great year for him overall in wrestling. Feud of the year in 93 was Jerry Lawler, which was the King of the Ring thing, when the King of the Ring was actually brought back as an actual pay-per-view for the first time, to where Lawler was being proclaiming himself as the true king, as he's done since the Days of Memphis, and had a good feud there, which ended, I believe, in a Kiss My Foot match, which even had Doink as a royal jester, believe it or not. This did happen. Feud of the year 94 against Owen Hart, which included an incredible match at WrestleMania 10. Still one of the greatest matches I've ever seen in my life, personally. But, a great, it's brother versus brother. You cannot go better than that. Or maybe you can with the match year 1992 with the British Bulldog and SummerSlam. That incredible Wembley Arena SummerSlam with the Intercontinental Championship. Again, has to be the match of the year hand down for 92. Should have been the main event, as far as we know, and depending if you watched that event in the UK or in the US, you had different main events at the time. But this was the true main event, in a lot of people's opinion. Match of the year 96, against Shawn Michaels and the Iron Man, the first ever Iron Man match at WrestleMania 12. Again, another incredible match. ironically, the first ever Iron Man match has to go to overtime, but, it was a great match for the then WWF Championship. Match year 97 against Stone Cold Steve Austin in a submission match at WrestleMania 13, which we did not see a submission. We saw Austin bleed out to the point of passing out, which made a double turn for that year, which included the incident in Montreal later on, which goes into the most hated wrestler of the year, obviously for the Canada-US divide. The most inspirational wrestler of the year in 1994, the Stanley Weston Award in 2003, ranked number 1 in the PWI 500 93 and 94, ranked number 4 in 2003 in the PWI Years Edition, and again ranked number 37 in the top 100 tag teams with Jim Neidhart in 2003. For the Quebec Wrestling Hall of Fame, that class in 2007. For Stampede Wrestling and the Hart family and Stampede go hand in hand, as it shows with the old things Brett did in Stampede. The NWA International Tag Team Championship, the Calgary version, 5 times, 4 times with his brother Keith Hart, and once with Leo Burke. The Stampede British Commonwealth Mid-American Championship 3 times, which I believe was the main title in Stampede. I may be wrong. Or it may have been the North American title, but regardless. Of course, the Stampede North American Heavyweight title 6 times. One of them, I'm sure, was the fucking main title. I may be confusing them, but who knows. And the Stampede Hall of Fame. For WCW, 4 times United States Heavyweight Champion. 4 times WCW Champion. 1 time tag champion with Goldberg, ironically. And of course, one of those reigns with the heavyweight title was a heavyweight title tournament win in '99, as well as a triple, being the 5th Triple Crown champion in WCW's history. Of course, WCW would be interesting for Brett because of the whole Montreal thing, and honestly, WCW, with that alone, would be a great rundown of his career, but, they'd have the stroke around that time. They'd have the kick from Goldberg around that time, and, it did kind of end a career on a bad note. But at the same time, WCW, in a way, didn't really use Brett to his full potential to begin with, so it's kind of damned if you do, damned if you do, damned if you don't. For the Universal Wrestling promotion, the Caribbean tag titles with Smith Hart. For the WWEHF, the United States title once, the Intercontinental Heavyweight title 2 times, the tag titles twice with Jim Neidhart, the World Heavyweight title 5 times, the King of the Ring in 91 and 93, 91 being a house show, 93 being the first actual pay-per-view. The Middle Eastern Cup, which I believe was one of the shows in Kuwait. I may be wrong on that. The Royal Rumble 94 with Lex Luger, the first ever co-winners of the Royal Rumble, which, if you watch that match, it's hard to tell, but I want to say both men hit the floor at the exact same time. But I believe some people say Brett hit first, but I feel like they hit at the same time. I'm not sure. I'd have to watch it again to make sure. But as we come back, we'll go finish Brett, and we'll go on the Neidhart.